So we've been having a lot of fun answering some of the great questions that you guys have been posting in the comments section of the video. So if you have a question that you want us to cover in an upcoming video, just be sure you click on that subscribe button and then leave your question in the comment below this video and we'll see if we can fit it in there. So today we're going to tackle a question about, hey, what does the body really need to be able to make its own hydrochloric acid and break down our food correctly? So I think this video is going to be way better than you would think a video would be on stomach acid. Let's jump in.
TC Hale is not a doctor and does not claim to be a doctor or licensed in any type of medical field. Don't be an idiot and use anything heard on the show as medical advice. This information should be used for educational purposes only, and you should contact your doctor for any medical advice. Now get off me.
So in our video on a different viewpoint for gastritis, Boop asked us, could you please do a video on what minerals and vitamins are needed to make HCl naturally? And this can be a little bit more complicated than you're really going to want the answer to be. I know there's going to be people that say, why'd you got to babble so much? Why don't you just tell me what I should take, whippersnapper? But you're going to see that this is going to be different from person to person. So it's not going to be some simple answer like you want it to be. And the confusion can set in because a lot of people are not making enough stomach acid because they don't have the resources to make that hydrochloric acid. The body needs minerals and other resources to be able to produce that stomach acid. So what a person can do is they'll kind of simulate that proper digestion by supplementing with betaine HCl so they can acidify their food correctly. And then that'll help them break down the food to the point that they can actually get the minerals out of that food and then supply the body with the minerals it needs to be able to make its own hydrochloric acid. And of course, the person really needs to have proper bile flowing, and it's really common for someone's bile to become too thick and sticky to flow correctly. So they need that flowing to really create that sizzle where the acid meets the alkaline bile, and then it creates that sizzle that helps us bust the food apart and get all the minerals and nutrients out of that food. So if you're not sure about your bile, in the description below, we'll put a link to our video for 10 signs of poor bile flow so you can check out, oh, is this a problem for me or do I need to put some action into correcting that as well? Now, the thing is this whole supplementing with HCl to get your body to start making more of its own HCl, it might only work for like 30% of the people that do it. So if that's the only explanation that I give, then there's going to be people that, whippersnapper told me to do that and it didn't do nothing. And I'm still taking these HCl capsules. So what we need to look at are the other factors that can create trouble. And when we look at how the body makes HCl, we understand that the body needs water and CO2, or carbon dioxide is that stuff that we expel when we breathe out. So it needs water and CO2, and we know it needs zinc too. And zinc can be a big factor for some people because the body uses zinc for a lot of things more than just making HCl. The body likes to use zinc to help the immune system function. So a person could get like a really bad cold or maybe like, a really popular cold, and they'll start having things like where they lose their sense of smell or taste. And that's usually a factor that comes into play when zinc has been depleted. So if the immune system really has to work overtime for some major invader and it's using up all the zinc just to help fight off these bad guys, then the person can use up all their zinc and then they won't have that sense of smell or taste until they can restore that zinc in the system. But if that's the case and they have such a depleted level of zinc that they can't even smell or taste things, then they're probably going to have a hard time making stomach acid as well. But even if a person hasn't lost their smell or taste, if zinc is still depleted, it might not have enough to make hydrochloric acid. So zinc can be a big factor, and if a person's not making enough hydrochloric acid, supplementing with some zinc can be a good idea. We use this enzyme called digestive from Empirical Labs, and it has some zinc in it and some other cofactors that help the body just kind of make more of its own HCl. So zinc can be a big thing. We also know that chloride is needed to make hydrochloric acid. So if somebody's been avoiding salt, that can be a real problem. So sometimes just adding in a good sea salt can help a person get more of the minerals that they need to make hydrochloric acid. But we also understand that CO2 is important to be able to make hydrochloric acid. And I'll have some links for some research that you can dig deeper into that science if you want to understand that a little bit better. But CO2 is a byproduct of processing carbohydrates. So if someone's on a really low carbohydrate or a keto diet or even a zero carb diet like a carnivore situation, then they may be producing less CO2 because they're not consuming any of those carbohydrates. So then the lower amount of CO2 is going to make less CO2 available for the body to make hydrochloric acid. Now, I don't want you to say, oh, I've been doing this carnivore for 10 years and it's all great. You know, carnivore is great. I use carnivore. I use it with some clients. I use keto. I use very low carb diets. But you still need to understand how the human body works and understand that why some people thrive on those diets and others just get worse. And also why some people will thrive on those diets for a specific amount of time and then trouble will come about and they won't do as well on those diets. And it's because of situations like this where the CO2 is going too low. And we'll put a link in the description below for our video on who should not use a carnivore diet so you can understand that a little bit better. But when there's not enough carbohydrates that are being processed, then there's not going to be enough CO2 available for the body to make hydrochloric acid. And the other problem is that it might just be a situation where the person is so insulin resistant, maybe it's a type 2 diabetic, where there are plenty of carbs coming in, but they can't process those carbohydrates. The CO2 does not come from just consuming carbohydrates. It comes as a byproduct of processing those carbohydrates. So that can be very important to look at. Is a person leaning on too far on an insulin resistant side to be able to process carbohydrates very well? And if that's the case, they need to take steps to correct that specific problem. But when this carbohydrate level goes low, CO2 is acidic. And then that's going to make that bloodstream lean a little bit more on the alkaline side. And then what the body will do is it will try to hold on to more CO2 to help acidify that blood. Because if it leans too alkaline, what's called the Bohr effect kicks in. And that means that oxygen can't get down to the tissue level to create energy and to make all these things happen. So this lack of CO2 can turn into a magnified version of a lack of CO2. Because if the body's holding on to this CO2 to try to acidify the bloodstream so that the body can use oxygen correctly, then it's not going to let go of enough CO2 to allow the body to use it to create this hydrochloric acid. And an even bigger factor into why I can't just tell a person what they should take to fix their low stomach acid issue is because it's not always about supply and demand. It's not like just, oh, let's just throw some money at a problem to fix it. Sometimes it's more about creating facilitation, where allowing the body to function the way that it's supposed to function. So setting up the body in a way that it can do the things that it wants to do anyways. So a good example is the gastritis video that we mentioned earlier. And gastritis can create this inflammation in the lining of the stomach that can actually damage those cells, and a lot of people feel like that damage can restrict those cells' ability to create hydrochloric acid. So that's one possible situation. But another thing that we need to understand is that we need to look at the body's autonomic nervous system. And this is kind of a system that runs a lot of the body's functions without us thinking about it. Like, we don't need to think about our heart beating. It just kind of does that. And that's part of the autonomic nervous system. And there are two sides. There's a parasympathetic side, which is our rest and digest side, and the sympathetic fight or flight state side. And both of these states are appropriate, and the body will move back and forth when it's an appropriate situation. So if you're running from a lion, the body is going to move into this sympathetic fight or flight state, and it's going to change the way the body's operating to optimize your ability to get away from this lion or to fight off a mugger or whatever the emergency situation is. So it's going to change the way the body uses glucose. It's going to constrict the vascular system. It's going to make a lot of changes to do that. The problem is, I'll put a link down below to some science that kind of helps us understand that in order for the body to make hydrochloric acid, the body needs to be in that parasympathetic state, which is the rest and digest state. So when you think about it, it really makes sense. Why would the body want to be able to optimize its ability to digest food and run from a lion at the same time? There's no scenario where you're going to run from a lion through the drive-in and grab a cheeseburger on the way as you continue to run. The body's not going to optimize for that because that scenario would never play out. So what goes wrong is that a lot of people will get stuck in this sympathetic state most of the time. So if a person's really stressed in their life, the body doesn't know that they're stressed because they're stuck in traffic or they forgot the report that their boss is waiting for. They just view that stress as, oh, this is an emergency. They're running from a lion. We need to change the way the body's functioning. So if a person has a lot of stress in their life, or if there's a lot of stress in the body, if the body doesn't have enough resources to run all the functions it needs to run, then that can be a stress to the body. If the body's dealing with some type of infection, some type of invader that's creating a lot of problem, that can be a stress to the body. But if a person is stuck in this fight or flight state most of the time, they're not going to be able to produce HCl, and it makes sense. So you can see there's a variety of factors that a person would really need to look at to figure out why isn't my specific body making enough hydrochloric acid. And my book, Kick Your Fat in the Nuts, kind of walks you through how to do some simple self-tests at home to figure out, am I leaning too far on this sympathetic side? And also you test that you can kind of look at that, is my blood leaning too far on that alkaline side? And maybe it's kind of holding on to all this CO2, and I might need to take some steps to correct that over-alkaline bloodstream so that my body can let go of some CO2 and allow the body to use that to make hydrochloric acid. And the book is available on Amazon, but I'm going to put a link in the description where you can get the whole thing totally for free. And if you think that, oh, maybe I am leaning too far on this sympathetic side, maybe I need to check out if that's a problem for me, and if it is, I need to take steps to correct that problem. And if that's the case with you, jump over right now and check out our video on understanding a sympathetic imbalance, and that'll walk you through simple tests that you can look at to see, oh, am I leaning too far on that side, and is this maybe the problem that's restricting my HCl production? I can't wait to hear about your results.